Morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever, whenever you are. I hope this finds you well. Mm, I am cold but comfortable. Need to get the day started. And today, I have something I want to say, which means that this is going to be somewhat prepared. What is art? What even is art? What even is art? So I'm going to give you a few minutes to get caught up, to get gathered around me, and then I'm going to say something. I'm going to improvise something somewhat prepared. And then we're going to talk about that until I'm done talking about it. And then we're going to read yesterday's chosen work. Good morning, Eric. And then I'm going to go get something to eat, get settled up in Panera. Settled down in Panera. Settling up is paying out your tab. I'm not going to have a tab. I'm going to write. And then I'm going to be on Final Fantasy IX. We're going to have a blast with that. It's always a good time. I'm going to do a bunch of stupid, silly voices. Probably people in the chat are going to say inappropriate things in an effort to make me laugh, not knowing that inappropriate things don't make me laugh. Unless I'm the one saying them, I guess. I kind of have the same rules and guidelines of what's acceptable to talk about when I'm not the one running the show as any AI. We're gonna let everybody get settled in, and we're gonna think about what is art. What even is art? And what does it mean to be reaching toward art? And what does it mean to not care to reach toward art? Because not everything, not every product, not every piece of art is reaching toward art, right? Because if you're going to ask the question and try to answer it, what is art? You have to begin at, okay, well, what does the word mean? We've already talked about exegesis. So how do you arrive at good understanding of words? Okay, well, what does the word mean and what has it meant in the past? And so art comes from the Greek word art. That means artifice. It means something made by human beings. And so by the lowest possible definition, everything is art. And so that's not a functional definition, especially if you're going to try to have abstracted and philosophical arguments about it. If you're going to try to avoid scholasticism in your approach to reality. And so what does that mean? That means that scholasticism is a moment in human intellectual tradition where we thought we knew everything, And so we began to argue about and frankly quibble with the minutiae of everything that we thought we knew, until what we thought we knew was a meaningless mountain of quibbled data. It didn't mean anything. That's where Martin Luther actually comes from. Martin Luther is actually famous. He's actually important to history, and he would have been important to history without his whatever 99 problems. He would have been important to history because he was a critic of the scholastics. He was already writing, so I'm not going to remember the name of the book now, but he wrote a book about what was it about? How would you describe that book? I can't even remember what it was called, but he wrote a book that I have read that I just can't remember the name of right now, and that's not great, but whatever. Hello, Keegan. He wrote a book highly critical of the scholastics, the school of his day, the intellectual school called the scholastics of his day. And see, the scholastics, they evolved out of being students of Thomas Aquinas. And Thomas Aquinas wrote Summa Theologica. Okay, and so the Summa Theologica is the sum of theology, and it's the book summarizing theology. It's all of it. Not summarize is the wrong way for you to think of it. It's the total of theology, basically, like the total knowledge, the sum, all of it. It's Latin. Summa is Latin. God damn, I'm itchy and impatient, and something is gonna send one of these things is gonna send me into a rage. I'm gonna freak out. So I'm keeping it together. But this isn't how I want this to look, and it pisses me off that it won't stay where it can be not like that. It's just getting on me today. It's distracting. Okay. Martin Luther wrote a book criticizing them for the things that we criticize them today for. Okay. And the things that we criticize them today for is the way we criticize them is not fair, because they were arriving at science. They were approaching empiricism. They just didn't have empiricism yet. They didn't have what we call science yet. They were still very much based in faith and belief propositions. That's why Martin Luther's work on faith and belief and faith and belief oriented actions is because in that day, Christianity was a nationhood. You were either Christian, Jewish, Muslim, or other, and that was a nationhood. It was a citizenry. You understand? You don't understand, but understand that you weren't German, you weren't Irish, you weren't Scottish, you weren't Spanish, you weren't Iraqi, right? You weren't Turkish. You were Christian, you were Muslim, you were Jewish, you were other. It was a nationhood. It was a citizenry. It was a citizenship. It was a collective body. It was an identity. It wasn't a religion in the way that we term it today. The way that we think about religions today came out of English colonialism and the inclusion in their empire of the big other, of the 17th and 18th centuries. India. No, you didn't. So what is art? So I came across this short, and evidently it's Brandon Sanderson speaking. I didn't know that. That's what Brandon Sanderson looks like? Okay. Well, I didn't know that. I didn't know that's what he looked like. I didn't know that this is what his, do you know who Brandon Sanderson is? I am not prepared for this section. I didn't know I was watching Brandon Sanderson. I just thought that I was watching some fat quasi-academic. And now I know that Brandon Sanderson is just some fat quasi-academic with a remarkably patchy mustache and thinning, somehow dirty hair. And so we could talk about this. I didn't know Brandon Sanderson had an internet presence. It makes sense that he would. I didn't know that he does quasi-intellectual TED Talk-ish videos. I didn't know that. Brandon Sanderson is a fantasy author, and not a good one. Not a good one. Just one. He's just a fantasy author. His prose is garbage. His prose isn't even sophomoric, it's Toddlerian. When I first came across this, it's just a short. This to me was just some fat guy. That's a big fat guy. That's a great big fat guy. You don't get that fat in a summer. Anyway, he's a fantasy author. And he's a fantasy author that God wanted me to talk about today. Sanderson informs a lot of my fiction. He informs a lot of Leaf, the way that Leaf is going to arrive to you now, the way Leaf was in 2012. I didn't realize in this article or in this short or this talk that he's giving, but this short clipped from it, I didn't realize that he was talking about 2010. I thought he was talking about the 90s in the way he's talking. He's talking about 2010. So that's upsetting. But anyway, he was a professor of some sort. He was a teacher, an instructor at a university of literature. He did literature. I don't know his degree or whatever his job title is. I don't give a shit. His literature is so Toddlerian that I don't take his teaching. I never took his teaching. I never took anything that I might learn from reading The Mistborn and other books that were available circa 2010. I never took anything that I might learn from the prose seriously, because the prose, the pacing, the narrative arcs, everything about his work is garbage. Everything about his work is garbage. But he has creative and interesting magic systems. Why does he have creative and interesting magic systems? Evidently, he plays in cribs from video games. It's fine. All of that's fine. In fact, I have no problem with any of that. But he's not a good author. And he's got 826,000 subscribers, which is upsetting. And then he gets up on stages with his little microphone behind his ear and his fat beard. And he tells people what they should think. And he shares his so-called expertise. And so, let's see if you can hear this.
In April 2010, film critic Roger Ebert, he made an infamous claim. He said,
2010. Roger Ebert in 2010. Was who to whom?
Video games can never be art.
Okay. So Ebert says video games can never be art. So if that's the question, what even does that mean? If we're going to do exegesis, we have to take the core claim, the core quote, and we have to ask a series of questions of the core quote that Brandon Sanderson is not going to do. He is presenting the quote out of any context. He says, this guy said in some essay that you're not going to read, this quote, video games can never be art. So we're in the middle of a he said, she said, which is scholasticism. We're in the middle of scholasticism. And we're going to apply our superior intellectual techniques of exegesis to the argument that is being laid out in front of us. In short form, by the channel. This isn't stolen. I assume that this was stolen from someone or by someone from whoever this fat guy is. It turns out, no, the fat guy wants you to know this argument clipped at this pace in this editing with these images for this amount of time. They made this. So we ask again, what is art? Okay. If we retreat to the Greek, art means anything made by humans. And so we can be asking, okay, well, can video games be art? That's an interesting question. But right now what we're asking is, okay, well, if Ebert says that video games can never be art, obviously your argument to follow that up is that video games can sometimes be art. Whether you're trying to say that video games are always art, which is a meaningless argument, because we know that by the definition of the Greek word, well, they were made by humans, so obviously that's not the argument that Ebert is making when he says they can never be art. Because what he's not saying is video games can never be made by humans, because we know that's not true. And so he's using art in italics and with an initial caps A. He's using art as a proper name, a proper noun. And when you do that, what you're actually not doing is scholasticism. You're not doing scholasticism. What you're actually doing is called Platonism. You're being Plato. And what you're saying is that video games can never be representative of the higher God, art. And so what he's saying, what Ebert is saying in this quote, that video games can never be art, what he's saying is that video games can never be a placeholder for God. Video games can never contain the noustos, the divine breath of God. Video games can never contain aletheia. Video games cannot be theonoustos. So just pause for a second, anyone who is an actual fan of Shaggy Phil Aletheia and what we're doing here, and just hold one of those fingers on each hand up and point them wherever you think Brandon Sanderson might be. You'll feel it. Ebert and Siskel, they're old men. In 2010, Siskel's been gone for a while. Ebert will be gone soon in 2010. I'm pretty sure we lost him in 2020. They're not talking to you. And even in their blog, they're not talking to fatbeards like Brandon Sanderson, because they're talking to important people. They're talking to people who actually understand what words mean and can write in more than simple sentences. If you read Brandon Sanderson, what you will notice is that there's almost not a single comma anywhere on the page, and that there's never an en dash. Never. And if he started using the em-dashes after I read him, then it's because people commented that this guy never uses commas. This guy, the only punctuation this guy ever uses is periods and question marks. Everything is a simple sentence. And if he ever reaches toward a compound sentence, it's just an and sentence. This and that, no comma. Maybe, sometimes, you'll get a compound and sentence. So Ebert is talking to people who are educated and who actually know what they're talking about. He's not just a movie critic. He's an art critic. And he knows what he's talking about. Because he's seen more art than you have. Not only has he watched more movies than you have, but he's talked to more artists than you have. He's spent his time in the company of more important and excellent people than you have. You can look at him. The difference in Brandon Sanderson and Ebert is in their bearing. Brandon Sanderson's a fat guy with an ugly, patchy beard and dirty hair. Ebert could be a Roman bust. This picture could be played back as an important intellectual any time in history. Brandon Sanderson cannot. So Brandon Sanderson is punching up at somebody whose ghost will never know he even lived. In 2025, when this video was released. Okay, so video games can never be art. Forgot his name. Ebert. I don't watch these guys. I don't like movies enough to give a shit. Ebert says, video games can never be a placeholder for God. They can never be a handshake with God. That's what Ebert is saying right here. And now we know I disagree. But I'm about to disagree with Brandon Sanderson too.
Yeah, I know.
Brandon Sanderson speaking.
His blog post set off this fire.
I know, as he gets crowd engagement. People blah, 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 like you in the chat saying dumb, irrelevant shit. And so he stokes that flame. I know.
Firestorm of discussion. I was there back then on the internet.
Firestorm of discussion. I was there back then on the internet. 2010 isn't so long ago on the internet that nobody was on the internet. I was there back then. Okay, so what we're doing, what Brandon Sanderson is doing, you can't see his face because we're not just going to spend the time for me to zoom in on his fat guy face and just really go into the facial literature available to us. Because I think these people don't think that we can read faces. And so they tell us what they think of us right on their faces, right on their cheeks, right in their eyes, right in that smarmy fat guy smile he's doing right now. He's just happy to be getting attention from a large room. And so he's happy to stoke their emotions. It's what he's doing. He's a fiction writer. It's all he knows how to do is stoke your emotions to get you to stay from scene to scene. Okay. You're done. You're all done. It's over. You're done. You're all grounded. I am fucking talking. 2010 was not so long ago on the internet that some blog post by some guy commenting on video games that you were there for is actually a prestige moment. 15 years ago was one generation ago. Being impressed about that is to quite literally have been born yesterday. That means to lack all of the information and skill gathering techniques necessary to defend yourself from new information. To be born yesterday means to be so ignorant, so stupid and so much a danger to yourself and the people around you that you will buy literally anything from literally anyone. And that's his audience. This is the people he's speaking to. What he's doing is establishing that he is on stage because he is the authority, because he was there for what he's talking about. He's building an argument from authority. What he's doing is he is establishing an argument from authority, which is a logical fallacy. And so from this, from the setup, we can just slide him right into the trash. We don't need anything he's about to tell us because it's all bullshit.
Everyone was talking about it.
No one was talking about it.
Talking about kind of how he's an out-of-touch old man.
Because that's a good way to dismiss someone, is to point out the fact that they're fat and have a patchy beard. Oh, well, he's just an old man. He's out of touch. He doesn't play video games.
Yelling at clouds. I disagree profoundly with Mr. Ebert.
Told you.
But he was an intelligent, articulate scholar, and he had a better
He was an intelligent and articulate scholar.
point than this clickbaity quote might imply.
He has a better point than this clickbait quote might imply. He's not criticizing the quote. What he just did is criticize his use of the quote. He just criticized him for clickbaiting you into his hook. Criticized himself. He buried his apology in the middle of his presentation. If you could see his face right now, he knows what he's done. And he's embarrassed about it. Because he knows he's a bad writer. And so in this moment, he also knows he's a bad speaker. He's a bad public speaker. He's a bad presenter. He should know that the apology goes at the beginning of the work. He should know that only a scholast and a sophist, look at that face. Look at those eyes. Look at how they're looking in slightly different directions. Look at how the left one is looking right at the camera, right at the audience. But his right one is drifting. That right there, that's called embarrassment. That's called a man who knows that he just did wrong. He just did wrong by his audience and he knows it. And so look what he tried to do. He tried to cover up his mouth. In the edit here, he tried to hide. He put himself behind a literal wall around his mouth. Because he knows that what he just did is unethical. It's sophist. It is, in a word, sophisticated. He knows that he just manipulated an audience that doesn't know any better. Do you know how I know that he knows that he just manipulated an audience that doesn't know any better? Because he's a college professor. He knows what a room full of ignorant people looks like, and he knows what the responsibility to handle that with care means. But there's no professor's creed, no professor's oath, no Hippocratic oath among public educators to do no harm. And so do you want to know who the people lying to you and ruining your life use to make sure that your life stays shitty? They use food-addicted professors. Because there's no creed. There's no ethic. There's no vow to do no harm to the student. Fat fucks like this are happy to do harm to you. Why? They're food addicted. Look at him. He holds that clicker in his hand like he's gonna fucking shove it in his face like it's a fucking Twinkie.
His argument was this: games are about mechanics and winning.
Games are about mechanics and winning. That was his argument. That he's saying that this was his argument. This is no longer a quotation of, it's a summary of. So let's just start at that quotation then. Let's start at that argument. Let's exegete it again. Let's exegesize it again. Whatever. The power of Christ compels you. Sentence. What the fuck does that mean? Games are about winning. What does that mean in the context of art? A game is an artificial construct in where one party competes against party B. Party A competes against party B to accomplish goal. There has to be victory in a game. He's correct. In order for it to be a game, there has to be a victory condition. Otherwise, it's just a task you're completing. It's just a thing you're doing. Time spent. Like looking at a painting or watching a movie, right? So Ebert's argument here seems to rely on the difference between watching a movie and playing the sections between cutscenes. And what he's saying is that the game can't be art. As much as it apes the experience of watching a movie for the pure appreciation of the movie, the game itself can't be art because the player cannot purely appreciate. It is not a purely appreciative way to use your time. It is not a purely observational way to use your time. That seems to be what Ebert means when he says art. The God art to him seems to be something that you observe and interact with in no way. Just fine. I can dig that. I can dig that he's saying that video games can't be observational, that you can't only observe a video game. Fine. He's wrong that video games can't be art, that they can never be art. He's wrong because the reaction among the video game culture between 2010 and 25 was to strip as much of the victory and as much of the challenge and as much of the actual game out of the game as possible. That is what happened. Uncharted exists, guys. It exists. Final Fantasy 15 is press circle to win. That's not a game. That's an interactive movie experience.
Not about aesthetic enjoyment.
Aesthetic enjoyment. I think that's what I defined his use of art to mean. So, Brandon Sanderson and I seem to at least have arrived at dual or multiple attestation we seem to agree that that's what Ebert meant.
So if I'm going to summarize him too briefly, I essentially said that while video games can contain art, such as an amazing digital painting,
video games can contain art, such as a cutscene or a dialogue tree. Something that you purely observe. Dialogue tree isn't even, I meant like a dialogue scene. Like that moment that Rachel and I stopped and just appreciated Final Fantasy IX in Burmecia while Zidane and Freya are up on a balcony looking down into the city while Braun and her general, I can't remember her name right now, and Kuja are talking about the rain and how that scene feels wet. Rachel introduced to me a definition of art that is anything that makes you feel. If it makes you feel things, it's art. If it was made by humans and it makes you feel things, that's art. Well, that's not a lot different from Theonustos. If it's made by humans and it breathes an emotion into you, if it breathes the creator's experience into you, their feelings, their thoughts, their emotions, their desire, their goals, their intention with the piece into you, that's Theonustos. And so that moment in that game was certainly artistic. It was certainly reaching toward the art that Ebert is talking about. And Final Fantasy IX is from 1999 or 2000. 10 years predating Ebert. So it is possible that an intelligent scholar a prepared and knowledgeable man might be ignorant that Final Fantasy IX has that scene. Might be entirely ignorant of Final Fantasy IX as an entity, as a brand entity, let alone as a reaching toward, as a pushing out of the cellophane wrapper that is this mortal coil, that is what we call reality, toward that God, toward that greater thing that he calls art or aesthetic appreciation. He might have been ignorant 10 years later when he wrote that it can never, because he never played a Final Fantasy game. He might be unaware. And so he makes that statement in ignorance. And we don't have to disagree with him. Agreeing and disagreeing, that's about opinion. That's about what John Stewart calls clapter. Clapter. It's where you say things. Clapter is specifically where you say things in an environment where you're expected to be funny, and what people are doing is clapping along for you to say more of that. They're not laughing. They're clapping when they should be laughing. It's called clapter. That's what he called it. Clapter. This man is looking for clapter. He's not looking to change minds. He's looking to reinforce an opinion that is already broadly held within a community. That's called clapter. And that's called sophism. You understand that the difference in a sophist and a philosopher, the difference in a sophist and a religious person is a sophist is going to tell you whatever you want to hear to get the money out of you. This man needs to eat right now. He's hungry and he's food addicted. He needs it right now. His hair is dirty and his beard is unkempt. He needed it before he came on stage. He spent the morning, instead of getting ready, cleaning his hair, shaving his beard, being prepared for this by going for a walk and not being a fat, sweaty fuck. He spent his time instead eating because he's food addicted. He needs this presentation. He needs it in order to keep feeding. Who the fuck buys books anymore? Well, 826,000 people do, but do you know how little money that actually is? He needs this. That's why he's got this short as a secondary revenue stream. He needs you to think that he's an authority because he was drifting around on the internet in 2010.
They're not at their core art because their focus is on obstacles to overcome in order to win.
Yeah, so Ebert is talking about from the perspective of the creator of the video game, that the creator of the video game can't make you something that's just aesthetically enjoyable because they have to beat you. You can't just aesthetically appreciate Dark Souls because it's going to beat you if you pause to appreciate it. If you pause to appreciate the art and the design of Super Mario World, Super Mario Brothers, you will die. You will fail the course. If you sit and think about every design choice throughout all of any video game, Pong, you will lose. How do I know? Watch my streams. Every time I start talking about the design choices in Brotato, I die. Because you're no longer engaged in the game. You're observing the artifice. And when we observe things and when we engage in the artificial, what always happens? What always happens when we become superficial? Have you ever thought about what it means to be subficial? I think Ebert's right, by the way. Ebert is right. His argument, fucking airtight. Fucking airtight. His argument is that they can never be video games because games, or they can never be art. Video games can never be art because games aren't art. Games are games. And if you stop to treat a game like it's an artistic presentation, you will lose. That is an airtight argument because it doesn't just apply to video games. The NFL isn't art because it's a game. Someone has to lose. Whereas the WWE isn't a game. It's purely art. But if we're going to get into that perspective, Ebert's his argument becomes less tight, because he's only talking from the perspective of the creator, from the writer, the director, the developer, the producer. But if you ask the voice actors and the people that do the mocap, especially when the voice actors get to do the mocap, like with Red Dead Redemption, is that what it's called? 2? The voice actors got to do the mocap. And they'll fight you till they die that was a performance, and that performance is art. And so when you're running around as whatever, you're all crouched down and you're running around and you've got that different gun and you switch guns as you're doing it and you notice that the hands and the stance are different, somebody fucking performed that. It wasn't just made so that the obstacle looked good enough for you to suspend your disbelief and actually engage with the challenge ahead of you. Someone performed that. And so performance makes this argument totally different. And we'll get to why momentarily.
By being victory focused, he argued they were an innately commercial product, like a
By being victory focused, you're an innately and entirely commercial product like a toaster. That makes sense. The NFL, totally commercial product. And I totally agree. The distinction here between game and movie, for example, or game and art piece, totally agree. Even hand painted video games, artful, lots of art in them. But I agree with Ebert's definition here. They're just a game. It's still a game. There's still a challenge, and you can still fail. But we have this definition of art floating around. We have this definition of art floating around that Rachel gave the channel. Makes you feel things. Designed to make you feel things. Designed to make you have emotional and intellectual experiences that you wouldn't otherwise have. Capable of giving you those things. And then we have performance. Can a video game be, in its own right, a performance?
coaster and not able to be considered arts. Anyone who deeply
Arts. Ebert's wrong. He's wrong. Video games can never be arts. Now we're talking about an art form. Not what's in the disc, but is what's in the disc itself a component of a form of art? Performative art. Can beating a game be a kind of performative art? Ask Jerry Rice or Len Swan if jumping up and catching a football can be a kind of performative art. More than just a skill. One of the arts. Could you sit down with a master and learn how to play a video game in a way that is itself a performance? Yes. Video games cannot, never be art. Because the video game itself can be the set and the setting, the stage, and the visual representation necessary for the performance. When you stand on a Greek stage, all you're wearing is your mask with the megaphone over the mouth, and you're reciting poetry that someone else wrote. You aren't the artist, but you are engaged in the arts because you are performing a poem in a mask.
Loves video games.
And so what he says right here is anybody who loves his argument, his contrapoint. Let's focus on his contrapoint to Ebert. I just made my contrapoint. I just used Ebert's argument to prove Ebert wrong. Let's see. Okay. We have to do this. Look at this. That face. That right there? That's a 9-year-old boy who didn't get enough attention from his classmates. Looking out at the world and realizing that there are a bunch of other 9-year-olds who didn't get enough attention from their classmates, all paying attention to him because he's punching up at a dead guy whose ghost will never notice him. He is only here. Look at that. When he said that, Ebert said that video games can only be a product, like a toaster. And the crowd reacted negatively. Look at that chipmunk smile. But look at his left eye. It's looking away. He knows what he's done. He knows what he's done. He's traded legitimacy for food. Food he doesn't need. He could intermittently fast every other day, every other 2 days. Eat 2 days off, eat 2 days off, and he would still be that big in a year.
Like a toaster and not able to be considered arts. Anyone who deeply loves video games will know
his argument, his contrapoint is anyone who deeply loves video games will, in brackets, already know. His argument with Ebert is that you already know he's wrong because you love video games. He makes an appeal to emotion. He makes an appeal to bias. And he encourages you to disengage with the argument intellectually. He's already established himself as an authority. And now he's told you that you're a priori, that means the things that you came to the argument or the discussion or the conversation or the new information, your a priori beliefs, the ones that you already had, were already right. You were already right, and you don't need to learn this. You don't even need to hear it. You don't need to engage with it on any level. You don't need to be critical of it. You don't even need to know how to be critical of it. I'm the authority, and you already knew you were right because you were right. That's what he just said. That's what he just did.
Argument just fails to understand what gaming is on a fundamental.
His argument fails to understand what gaming is on a fundamental level. Well, what is gaming on a fundamental level? What do gambling, the NFL, and arcade machines all have in common? Now, I have the chat hidden because you're fucking grounded, so you don't get to tell me what you think they all have in common. But I'll tell you what they all have in common. They're an end user product that you have to buy, spend money on, in order to participate in. Someone wins, someone loses, and it's always you. He's wrong. And he's trying to reach, like a scholastic, he's trying to reach to a priori and first truths. He's trying to reach toward first principles. Well, you're a Christian, so you're already a good person, so everything you believe is already right. So let's not engage in this too deeply. Let's just go off here in this other place where we can talk about something that we already know that we're right.
Loves video games will know His argument just fails to understand what gaming is on a fundamental level.
Then what
Those
is
of us
it?
who are gamers know that the mechanics themselves can be part of the art. And in fact, video games let
Can be part of the art. But he didn't say the mechanics. Ebert didn't say the mechanics. He said the victory condition. The victory condition is what excludes video games from being art. And he says, well, the mechanics can be artful. Len Swan can do all the ballet he wants. Tyreek Hill can be a world-class sprinter. It can be as artful and as aesthetically appreciable as you want it to be. You can do as many touchdown dances as you want, as many sack dances as you want. The victory condition at the end of the game remains, disqualifying it from being a performance.
us tell stories that you couldn't tell in any other medium because the mechanics are part of that artistic experience.
So there are emergent stories. There are emergent narratives that emerge, right, as an effect of the cause of the gameplay mechanics. Failure in its own right is a story that can emerge from the victory condition. Fine. The meta narrative that emerges from the NFL makes it the most interesting reality TV show on the planet. And all of that is art. But the game, the played game, remains a game. It remains a game. Someone has to lose.
Winning.
The emergent narrative from losing, frankly, gets old. It gets old fast, really. Look at the new fans of the NFL because it became a place where you could gamble. They can't handle all the losing.
Winning isn't the art, but the emotions of winning can be part of it.
Winning isn't the art, but emotions can be part of it. So he's trying to say that the whole is art because it has pieces that are artful. And that's the end of the short. That's not even a good argument. That's a terrible argument. It's a fucking terrible argument, Brandon Sanderson. The pieces don't make the whole. That's all I had for that. I wanted to do that. That pissed me off when I saw that, and it deserved a long form. Brandon Sanderson is wrong. Video games can be artistic, but I do agree. I do agree with that definition of the game aspect. But video games can be art, and I disagree with Ebert there. Video games can be art because the act of playing them is a performance. And it can be a performance. It can be a mutual performance between the developer. Look at the thing that we made for you. Look at this world that we built for you to play around in. Look at this game, this victory condition that we gave for you to chase down. And the emotions of doing that can be art. It can be art. It rarely is. Rarely is. It's rare that humans reach to something greater than themselves, more than themselves. But it can be. Someone wins. It wasn't about my stance, Ultra. We were critiquing Brandon Sanderson. We weren't talking about me. My opinion is irrelevant. I made my opinion obvious if you're paying attention. I live stream video games. Obviously, I think the video game is art. Computer code is art, correct. But it's not designed to be appreciable. The code itself is not designed to be aesthetically pleasing. Or aesthetically appreciated. The point wasn't to establish myself as an authority and better than Brandon Sanderson. The point was to criticize Brandon Sanderson as a fat asshole. Ebert is defining art as a god, as a placeholder for God. And Brandon Sanderson is saying that this thing that you like to spend your time with has as much artistic merit. It has as much merit to human memory as the David, right? As a Da Vinci, as a Monet, as some foreign French film, some foreign film, whatever. And he's wrong. Super Mario has almost no artistic merit. Sure, it has art value. Sure, it was made by humans for the purpose of winning. It elicits emotions along the way, and there are emergent narratives that are along the way. That there are narratives. There are things. You know what a story is, right? It's a thing that happens or that you imagined happening that you tell somebody. When you play a video game, there are definitely narratives. There are definitely things that happen that you go and you tell people about, right? That's what the what do they call it? The word of mouth sales of video games used to be. But when you see people posting what they're doing, what they're playing, when you see people live streaming, that's art. The degree to which it's reaching toward that capital A doesn't matter to the purposes of this. Ebert's wrong. That's art. And definitely you need the video game in order to be able to do that. You need the video game in order to tell the emergent stories that come from playing the video game. So the video game can be artful. And some video games can be art. Some video games encourage you to not play them. Just sit back and watch them aesthetically. But Call of Duty's not art. I don't think anybody would make that argument. Call of Duty's not art. Call of Duty's a competition. Call of Duty's a game. League of Legends is not art. It's a game. It's a competition. Ark Raiders isn't art. It's a competition. Ark Survival Evolved is art. There's no win condition. There are bosses to fight. There are big monsters to fight. But that's not a win condition. Your character doesn't escape the arc and get an epilogue where the game is over. 7 Days to Die it's art. Right? It doesn't have to be great. Art isn't like top shelf whiskey. Right? The category art isn't a shelf. It's not a price tag. That's what Ebert's getting wrong. And that's what Brandon Sanderson is reacting to. Because Brandon Sanderson is trying to get you to think about, because if you're watching him, you're a fan, he's trying to get you to think about how all those hours spent in his garbage prose is art, because you were just appreciating for the aesthetic value. But the prose itself has no aesthetic value. It lacks artistic merit. And so he would be sensitive about lowering the bar on what qualifies as art. He would be sensitive to that because he thinks he's an artist. Those are art, right? But that's not what the game is. The video game isn't those character models. Absolutely, the character models were made by human beings. But those character models are used just like the uniforms and the padding and the field and everything else that's aesthetically pleasing in the NFL to pursue the victory condition, right? This is why people get upset about pay to play, right? Pay to win. If you can buy a gun that gives you a competitive advantage that I can't get access to by being good at the game, That's not art. Not that ellipsated on purpose, because you know that conversation. I am trusting that all of you are intelligent enough to be able to put these male and female sockets together and we can just continue. Or lighten up a big fucking Christmas tree. Work with me here. It's like Philaletheia, it's like Philosophia, right? Art is reaching toward a arte, right? It's reaching toward a higher thing, right? We can ask, okay, that movie was good, but was it art? And that's a good question, because art is responsible. But the question, if you ask it in its long form, because is it art, that's a fucking meme. You understand that? That's a meme from a time before any of us was born. Before Ebert was born, before Ebert's parents were born, before Ebert's grandparents were born. Yeah, but is it art? Is kind of like the question that goes all the way back in history, all the way back, right? When the popes were asking, yeah, but do we need to see their dicks and their labia? Do we need it? Can't they just be wearing flowers or feather, or what are those fucking things called? Leaves? Do we need it? But is that art? Right? That's a question. And it goes back a long way before Brandon Sanderson in 2010. Trying to date this to 2010. That is my stance, Jackie. You make it art. You complete the circle in your specific engagement. The emergent narratives from your gameplay make the gameplay art. But there is a victory condition that makes the game itself a game. The gameplay is performance. It's performance art. It's the closing of the loop that makes the narrative art. And Final Fantasy VIII is about that. We talked about it. Squall goes to the wrong time. At the beginning of the game, you, the player, close the circle so this can be over. It's not about victory conditions. It's about telling a story. That's art. But Call of Duty is not about the specific way you capture the flag. Nobody, like, you'll tell that story and people will watch you, but that's not what the game is about. The game isn't about a specific way that the characters developed over the course of capturing those flags. It's just not. And that's okay. Because what we can say is, that was a good game, but was it art? No. And it's easy. Is Super Mario art? No. Is Final Fantasy VIII art? Yes. Is Final Fantasy VII art? No. Like, we can do that. I like Ebert's victory condition makes it not art. I like that. I disagree with it because it doesn't hold water at the quantum level, but nothing does. It's a colander at the quantum level. If you zoom in far enough, you can squeak through his armor and you can say, okay, but wait a minute, performance makes all of it art when you close that sphere. But you, the player, are who ossifies the narrative into a fossil, who makes it a story that you can then carry with you and give to other people. But that is called theonoustos. That's called scripture, and not every game has that. Not every game has in it things that you can take away from the developer that they learned over the course of making the thing, or their lives that they are giving to you, that they're breathing in it for you to take away. That is not in every game. It's just not. And the games that have tried to do it with single-player experiences, the games that aren't, that have tried to do it with single-player experiences, have either failed or been ignored so many times that they've given up. Around 2010, video games got really interested in that question. And they attacked it. But video games have been asking that question since the 80s, since the 70s. Oh, wait a minute. Can we make this just a pure art form? Can this be just pure art, where the player's engagement makes it a performance? The player is performing not for our amusement, but for the victory condition. Is that possible? And the answer is 100% it happens all the time. Just less likely, less often than you would think, and significantly less often in the modern era than it did before 2010, when people got butthurt about it. He doesn't present, he doesn't do what I did. Where he's like, okay, yeah, he has to be wrong because of this thing. Okay, now let's move to how that's how I proved it, how I've demonstrated it. He doesn't make an effort because he's doing sophism. That was the point. I got in my feelings about, I didn't realize it was Brandon Sanderson, but I got it in my feelings about that series of things that he said to show you, this is what I'm talking about. When I talk about people are lying to you and people are manipulating you to get you to think stupid things, this is what I'm talking about. People who stand up in front of you and say, I'm an authority because I was on the internet in 2010. It's like, go fuck yourself. We all had Facebook. Everybody had Facebook in 2010. Go fuck yourself. And now I'm done. That was an hour. Thank you for being here, Jackie. Thank you, everybody else. I see the 7 likes. Not everybody likes it when I'm actually talking. Doesn't make any sense to me. Here we are. Oh, I didn't post it. It's still a draft, isn't it? Okay, so what did I call it? I'm glad that it worked for you, Jackie. I work better as a distraction than as entertainment. I don't remember what I called this scene. I don't remember what I saved it as. And I don't think I posted it yesterday. I didn't. Baking is art. Can be art. Did I? How did I just delete it? Well, I don't think distraction is a bad word. So what did I fucking call it? I don't know what that means, Sage. Yeah, what did I do with it? I don't know what you're talking about, Markin. I don't know that I've seen your questions, Merkin. What the hell? I remember writing it. So how did I delete it? How did I not save it? Or did I save it to somewhere else? I wouldn't say the live is about anything anymore, and I wouldn't say that any live is ever about anything. Like, if you don't have the ability to even look at the title, why do I owe you that? I save this as? Yeah, it's nice. Oh, that's really upsetting. I don't know how I did this. I wrote this, and then I deleted it somehow. You're gonna bitch at me. You're gonna bitch at me for not engaging in the chat after apologizing that the things you said in chat didn't show up. Go fuck yourself, dude. Yes, Jackie, I am computer literate. I just don't know how I made this mistake. Hey, Mayrov. This is annoying. I don't know why this is formatted like this, but Okay. Almost. Now we reformat. Golly gee. Line spaking double. Paragraph. Half. And times New Roman. Thank you. Alright. That's better. Stop. Why is this still highlighted? Oh, fucking great. That's what happened. It just didn't save. It just crashed on me and didn't save. Okay. Typing in gloves is not the easiest thing in the world. Turns out. Alright, well, I guess Rachel's just gonna miss this one. This is a scene that I haven't titled from Chapter 3, but it will open Chapter 3. That was him. Kale breathes at her side. Leaf has just left the tavern. Sophia and Kale have set themselves up in this town's tavern. A not immodest space carved out of the earth to a man's shoulder, with a mounded earth ceiling, supported by brick columns honeycombing the space. Sized to fit many hundreds of people. No more than 60 fill it now. All evening, since they surrendered their weapons to the proprietor and had their first meal, Kale is on his third. Sophia will not have a second. They've sat here along a far wall watching the torches throw their soot and smoke into the roof and its little chimneys, and the townspeople being townspeople. She had to physically restrain Kale when Leaf walked into the building. We have the whole season, Kale. If it's him, it'll be him tomorrow. His hand finds her thigh and squeezes. Sophia searches his face. What's wrong? Look, he says, pointing toward the shadow with black boots making its way toward them. Another Longstrider? Sophia asks. I don't think so. Kale whispers. It stopped in the doorway like it had never been in a tavern before. It looked like it wanted to turn and follow after Leaf the second it saw him, but couldn't, because it would be too obvious, even to him. He didn't notice us. You think Leaf is that oblivious? She asks. He's never seen a Longstrider before? But that's as far as the conversation will get for now. The shadow is walking toward Callan and his thugs. Fuck. Your father, Sophia breathes the admission, is alive. You were right. I don't know how you knew. I don't know how it's possible. But you were right. Zachleen's alive. That wasn't my father. Sophia turns to her betrothed, eyes wide. Kale is a literal shadow of himself, retreated so deeply into his cloak in the flickering, torchlit darkness of the tavern's perimeter, she could have mistaken seeing him at all. She's only seen him like this a few times, and not in years, not since he was little more than a feral little boy his mother picked up from a tree in an abandoned, well, probably not abandoned, but a glade at any rate. What do you mean? That was not my father, Kale declares. That thing might be wearing his body, but that was not my father. Whatever else she was feeling, having seen a man she had believed dead for 13 years, Sophia is only now concerned for her pairmate. Kale. She takes a deep breath. Why do you think that? He's quiet a long time. She can feel the turmoil radiating from inside him as she watches from first the town people abandon the tavern, then the wintering merchants and their guard, leaving just the two of them long after the staff have shut up shop for the night. She says nothing. She's known Kale as long as she's known anyone, since they were children, and then again for years along the Barty trails. You couldn't feel him, Sophia? Cale finally asks. His voice is small, the voice of the scared boy her mother brought home. The voice of a man seeing the unthinkable, thinking the undoable. You couldn't feel the thing inside him? It was like the cold of death and the joy of decay. That thing is an abomination. It must be destroyed. You cannot mean. Not tonight, no, Cale says. His eyes, ruddy like the clay, even now shielding them from the winter winds of this withered world, are dimmed, like the soul that only this morning lit them had retreated back to that glade, back to seeing Punctilios savaged by bandits just because. She sighs. This cannot be happening. This can't be real. Tomorrow, Cale is saying. I'll get our weapons from the proprietor and we'll figure this out. That's not our place, Cale. The gaze he whips around to her is insane. She knows that. This is his father you're talking about, Sophia. Her mother chides in her head. What would you do if it was your father? Fine. All right, Sophia says. Some of the edge falls away from Cale's nose and mouth. Tomorrow, what's your plan? There doesn't need to be a plan, he says. We go to Leaf. We stay by his side. If that thing is here to hurt Leaf, it'll go through us first. And if it's not, then we take Leaf and we leave. We do what we were meant to do already. We do what we are meant to have already done. Sophia's sigh is as epic as her pairmate's dreams. Did you see him, Cale? Did you look at him? Yeah, he's huge. What of it? You don't know... Sorry. We'll defeat the necromancer easily with him by our sides, and he has the gauntlets. You don't know that. You don't know any of that. You don't even know if Leaf knows how to throw a punch, let alone... Sophia. She closes her mouth. Her fear, her what-ifs, her resistance, cut off with a click of her teeth. I need this. Don't take this from me just because you're scared. Scene end. Fiend. Yeah, I don't know how I fucked that up, but that's why I keep redundant copies. Good morning, Analog. And that is that. This is where you don't hold your adulation. This is where I gotta make a few bucks so I can go eat without dipping into the money that was sent to me so I could buy cigarettes. So, it is what it is. We are at that point where we are at. Thank you guys for being here. Today's been a slow morning. You guys got other things to do than listen to a homeless guy talk about stuff. I get it. I wouldn't listen to me either. I could be better. I watch my work and I get hypercritical. I can't really pay attention to what I'm saying. I have to do something else while I'm listening to myself. Oh, I bet I know where my scissors are. And now I'm free to move on to the next thing. I have done my work for the day. Well, for the morning. It should be about 10 o'clock, 10:30. If I leave right now, that'll have me getting lunch at about 11, which will have me sitting down to write at about noon. If that takes me 4 hours, that'll have me working on Final Fantasy IX at 4 p.m. All of this is Eastern Standard Time. But if I'm not mistaken, I already have the bulk of this scene that I want to do drafted. This might be a longer scene. It might be a cap to the first triptych of triptychs, so it might be a little longer. But here we are. That's what I'm gonna do. If the chat doesn't pick up, or if it just keeps saying unkind things to me. That's where the day's gonna take me. Hello, Lisa. Rachel enjoyed very much my singing to myself while I was playing Triple Triad in Final Fantasy VIII, so I took her appreciating it and I turned it into shorts so you guys could enjoy it too. Bow, 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 bow. Fucking facial hair is like 20 gauge cable. As you can now see, it grows at different lengths and different textures. I am afraid I'm going to cut my lip off. That will have to do. There you go. Crooked, probably. I am terrified I'm going to cut my face. These scissors are super dull. The right side of my beard is much more polite than the left side of my beard. It grows in a different direction. There we go. Technically, it's a mustache up when it's up there, but yeah. C'est la vie. Okay. Oh, wee wee. Now you can see the left side of my lip. Man, now my fucking face hurts. That did more to just yank on the hair on my lip than it did to cut it. Now my lip just hurts. Okie dokie, artichokey. That means that's the show. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for watching the show. You have a great day. You're going to see more from me in just a few hours. Take care. Be well.